everybody is saying like, yeah, you can't do it because it will be escalation.
Yeah.
And we one day became just pissed off, asking like, okay, what does it mean escalation? You already had Mariupol. What can be worse than Mariupol for you to intervene? Like, what it is? What does it mean escalation? And the fact escalation means the fear that Russia will use nuclear weapon. So because of this ambiguity that Russia pushed, and all each time said that is the red line. That would be the escalation. Ukraine's been proving there is no red lines for Russians. If we give you HIMARS, will you attack Russians? If we give you ATACMS, will you attack Russians? Yes, we will attack Russia because they are attacking us. So why we need to intercept each of these missiles when we can attack their airplanes standing at the airfield, for example? That's just military logic behind this. But each time we needed to prove. 3 years we are proving that we are not attacking civilian residential areas in Russia. But there is still questions, should we be given any type of the missile that is longer than 300 kilometers? Because who knows if you attack Moscow. If Russia is attacking Kiev, why we cannot attack any object, military object inside of Moscow capital? So I still don't know what arguments to find, because for me, it looked like it's logical. Everything is visible. You have 3 years of experience. Each time we pass the same way. Like, no, you can't get this. In 3-6 months that we are receiving it, we demonstrate that it has influence at the battlefield. And we could have it 1 year ago, for example. But no, at the next meeting with the foreign politicians, we received this question, but that can be escalation. Okay, if you believe like this, so next time escalation can be that it would be your territory.
Hello, and welcome to Talking Ukraine in English. Today, our guest is Hanna Shelest. Hanna is the Director of Security Programs of Foreign Policy Council, Ukrainian Prism, Editor-in-Chief at UA Ukraine Analytica. I first came across Hanna when I was working at Hromadske International. She came on as a guest on Hromadske. This was an English-speaking program, and Hanna often comes on various programs to offer her expertise and analysis. She's been in this field, security expert and political analysis field for many years. And I'd like to welcome you, Hanna, and maybe you can tell us a little bit more about yourself so people get a sense of who you are.
Thank you, Damian. It's a pleasure to join you and to speak Ukraine again and again. That's the enormous topic that we never stop talking about. You're right. Currently, I'm the director of the security programs and global outreach at the biggest foreign policy think tank in Ukraine, called the Foreign Policy Council Ukrainian Prism. The headquarters are in Kiev and in Brussels. We are independent, non-governmental, but because of our expertise and reputation that we've been building for quite a number of years, more than a decade, we are closely working with the parliament, with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with other governmental agencies, advising them on the issues of the foreign policy all around the globe. I also established more than 10 years ago the English language journal on foreign policy called Ukraine Analytica. That's available online. But in addition to these, I'm a guest lecturer at the different universities and military colleges in Ukraine and abroad. And since November, I also have the additional hat as the head of the supervisory board at the Ukrainian Institute. It is the governmental structure in charge of the cultural diplomacy. And considering that Ukraine is going global, around the globe with the cultural and public diplomacy, so I joined them as well pro bono, but to assist with promoting Ukraine and its cultural heritage around the globe. I also advised different governments and military and business around the globe on the issues of security. I've been in this for more than 25 years. And many years ago, I was in charge of the Navy strategy of Ukraine when we, for the first time, developed it before the full-fledged war, and the foreign policy strategy of Ukraine. So anything around this, and definitely conflict studies. My PhD was in mediation of military conflicts. So now it is interesting as an academic in this sphere to follow how this develops inside of your own country.
Yeah, yeah. So you've seen how things have evolved in Ukraine and from the Maidan demonstrations into obviously the full invasion. So I'd like to get into that, that how that has changed and maybe how your perception of those events as they happened. But before that, you're a native of Odessa. You live in Odessa. That's where you're based out of. What has life been like for you personally? Just being in Odessa since the start of the war, and especially in the recent months when Russia has really ramped up attacks on a lot of Ukrainian cities with drones and rockets and like I don't know, like you've stayed, you could have left. Why have you stayed? And what's the general feeling around Odessa from people in your circle?
That's true. I have stayed in Odessa. I haven't moved here except of my business trips, and the whole family stayed here. That was a deliberate choice. Partially, we realized that if we leave our land, we give the permission for Russians to take the city. So the people should be here to speak about what is happening, what are the moves in the city. And as an expert, I felt that I should be here. But at the same time, we realized that it is just 60 kilometers to the border. It's not that much. And at the first year, we had a hope that Odessa, at least the downtown, would not be attacked significantly. That was the fear that Russia would like to do the landing operation. Or that in case Mykolaiv, the next big city, would be occupied. So yeah, that can be the open road to us. But in this case, we always thought that, okay, if necessary, it's easier to leave Odessa than to leave Kiev, for example, or Kharkiv, because you are much closer to the Russian border than to a foreign border. But at the same time, maybe because of my security background, I definitely carefully calculated the risks of what is here. Now looking back, I understand that the biggest mistake that were in our mind, first of all, we couldn't imagine how violent and how far Russia can go. So even as an expert and studying Russian wars at the post-Soviet space before, being in all these countries, we always had a feeling that it should be something quick, not because Russia's strong, but because it is not beneficial for Russia itself to have a long-term war. And then with each week, it was the understanding that no, that's not the classical Russian type war that we saw before, that it can become more of Afghanistan for Russia rather than Georgia in 2008. And we're today exactly at the anniversary of that Russian-Georgia war. So that was first wrong perception, probably. The second, in Odessa, because of the cultural heritage, because of all those connections to the Russian cultural space during the Russian Empire and Soviet Union, as all the movies made here, holidays, we had this false expectation that Russians will never attack the downtown where I live because it is the something what is important for them. At least they talked about this like this. So they would not destroy the UNESCO protected downtown. They will not attack something what is so important for their views and what they wanted for the future. The problem is that in 3 years, we have all confirmations that Russia doesn't care about Russian Orthodox Church, because that was their biggest church here was destroyed by their own missile. They don't care about UNESCO protection. They don't care about Russian Empire cultural heritage. They just don't care. And that's why the last year we experienced more and more attacks against the historical downtown. My own flat was destroyed by the Russian drone in November, and I live just 5 minutes walk from the main street with no military objects or even suspicious objects around because all I have is the church, university, and few same type cultural heritage historical buildings. Doesn't matter. So now we just realize that none of our worst expectations can be real because Russia can go even more worse. I don't know if it's correct in English to say.
Uh,
Fortunately, there is no limits to what they're doing.
and yeah, that was shocking to me too, because initially when the invasion first started, or there was talk of the invasion starting, I had this idea like, well, what are they going they want to protect these Russian speakers. What are they going to do? They're going to destroy the cities and kill these people. And it's sort of like I couldn't connect like how they could achieve that goal with a military invasion. But it seems like, yeah, like once they saw there was resistance, they sort of just were like, all right, well, we built this, we're going to destroy it and then start again, or something like this. I mean, what is the rationale for them? Do you have any insight?
There are several things. First, you need to understand how Russians perceived the so-called Russian-speaking territories. And here, probably for those who are not following Ukraine very deeply, we need to explain why we became Russian-speaking territories. Some of the cities like Odessa is just because of the multi-ethnic composition of the like Greeks, Turks, French, Ukrainians, Russians, and that was just the language of the Russian Empire. The same as India speaks English. Yes, it doesn't make them the Englishman. It's just the language of the empire for them. So that was the question for us, first of all. But then for the big cities, it's also happened because of the Soviet Union. All universities in 1950s were made to speak only Russian language. All higher education turned. So in the big cities, there were no other chances. Like if you're an educated person, you've been becoming Russian speaker. So, for example, in 1998, when I was graduating from the high school, in the city of 1 million people, we had only one Ukrainian language school. So it was not a choice of people to be like this. It was just the politics involved for a century. So we are speaking not about 5 years policy. That's the time that we needed to change this. So because of this, Russia thought that Russian speaking equal to being pro-Russian. I remember 2014 during Euromaidan in Odessa, among the Jewish community, the most popular joke was when the two old Jew is talking to each other and saying like, "Oh, you know, Moisha, I'm afraid to speak Russian." Another is asking like, "Why? You're thinking that Ukrainian nationalists will come and kill you?" And another answered, "No, I'm afraid Putin will come and protect me." So, that is the feeling here that what language they speak, I don't care, because many people in Odessa region can speak several languages at the same time. When you had Bulgarian and Moldovan villages, together with Ukrainian and Albanian, just at the 2 square kilometers, these people usually speak 5 languages, and that's normal for them. They're not thinking about this as something extraordinary. And with these, like, we never thought that is something extraordinary, that you have the history that happened. Russians saw differently. Plus, they had a lot of the fake sociological surveys. People were getting money. Those people who are now either in Russia or in Spain with their villas. And they demonstrated the picture that Odessa would not fight. Odessa would just surrender. So in 2022, in February, in pro-Russian social networks, it was, for example, the gossip that the mayor of Odessa ordered 1 million roses to greet Russian armed forces in Odessa. Yeah. Roses were on the ship, true, but because of 8th of March. And because that was business that just been delivering, and then of February, usually it is the roses, flowers coming for the International Women's Day. But that's how Russians perceive it. So all these misperceptions of the locals brought them to the situation that they couldn't understand that speaking Russian or having some cultural heritage associated with the Russian Empire doesn't mean that anybody here would like to live in the current Russian Federation with all this dictatorship, with the absence of freedom, and just in general to change something of where they are living, why they are living, and so on. That's why you saw absolutely different reaction in February 2022 here. That's why it was such a shock to the Russian politicians when they saw that Odessa is fighting, that Odessa is really caring about Navy here, that we help the cities around us because we understand that the fact that they protect us, and that so many people stayed in the city. Yeah, there are some people who left at once. Many returned, many not. That's connected, first of all, with when you have each night 5 air raids, it's difficult for the adults. You understand what does it mean for children. So that's why, yes, people with the small kids, for example, originally left because they were afraid for the kids. People with the panic attack, they left. Or some other people who were like afraid. That's normal to be afraid of the war. But now you see the city that is, it is the huge paradox that is very difficult to explain sometimes for the foreigners who are coming to the city, because you have a city where the new restaurants are opening. You see the city that with the full beaches in the summer because it is summer resort. So you think, oh, people don't care about war, but then you see the destroyed buildings, or we see the people all running to the counters, what we were not running in 2022 because we were not afraid that much. You see people with the absolutely different attitude to the military, building the like business for veterans and so on, because we explain it with the resilience. We want to show Russians that they are not able to break us, because their main task is to demonstrate that Ukraine is a failed state, that we are depressed, we would not be able, like we just need to surrender. And with all this life in the city with the developed business, it's not that people are forgetting about war. It is that people would like to demonstrate the victory of life over death.
And yeah, then my next question is, has this, upscale or increase in drone attacks, which I guess Russia's desire is to break the Ukrainian spirit to say, okay, like let's agree to a ceasefire so this stops. Has that had a psychological effect on people who maybe were wanting some different results from the war, but are now sort of like, well, let's just accept, like a ceasefire more on Russia's terms? Like has it worked in the sense that Russia has designed it to try to get Ukrainians to submit?
That is quite an interesting. That's definitely with the Russian logic. Even that, we should be clear that when they are targeting the cities like Odessa, they have three main target directions, let's say. Yeah. Direction number one is potentially military objects, because it's not always military values. That's what they consider, at least, like, for example, the storages of the supermarkets. They announce very often that it is the place where the ammunition is safe. It can be only Coca-Cola there, but that's what we call potential, military, like airport or something like this. Then you had Odessa seaport, because Ukrainian export is that much dependent on the maritime industry. And that was very important for business, for economic development, for the country as a whole. As soon as Russians broke the grain deal, that was absolute manipulation, and we managed to establish the maritime corridor. They intensified their attacks against the port, because they need foreign ships to stop coming here. They need to destroy the potential for the economic income. And the third is what you talked about. It is how to frighten people. It's how to spoil the life of people. It's not the absolute, it's very subjective in this case, but I remember the feelings of my neighbors when it happened to our house. I haven't seen crying or some depression or like, oh, Ukrainian government is bad, let's negotiate. No, it was absolutely different feeling. It was the determination, like fucking Russians, they would not break us. That's their guilt. We now hate them even more. So if before 2014 or even 2022, a lot of people were pacifist and didn't care about it, and they thought that, okay, that's high politics, the closer war is coming to your house, to your personal life, the more understanding it is bringing what is the real reasons of this war. People, because people are not stupid. You can be totally apolitical, and you can blame your government in something, and Russians are playing with this in social networks a lot. I followed the Russian, pro-Russian channels in the Telegram, for example. And one of the narratives they are promoting is exactly that Russia is striking Ukraine only because Ukraine is striking Russia, or that all of these fires and destructions that you have in the city is just because the air defense of Ukraine is intercepting. If they would not intercept Russian missiles, there would be no problems for the people. Totally nonsense. But it works when you repeat it daily, and people are not that much aware of how everything is happening. But at the same time, the reality is coming that people are more determined and understanding that what Russia would like is just destruction. That what Russia is requesting is not about something practical that we can give them. That it's not about NATO, especially what people believed before 2022 was definitely this NATO narrative, that NATO is guilty, that NATO enlargement is guilty. That's where people said, oh, why Ukraine cannot just give it to agree to the neutrality. after Swedish and Finnish membership, when they joined NATO, these arguments almost disappeared because people said, okay, so why there is no problem for Finland and Sweden, but that is happening to Ukraine? So, this reasonable doubt are coming even to the most apolitical people.
So, in the sense that there's people, just to switch a little bit, when the invasion first happened, I remember thinking like, how are they advancing so quickly from Krim and into Ukraine and taking these territories? And I've heard these theories like, well, they had collaborators. There was people who like betrayed Ukraine or helped them advance, because it's a pretty small physical channel to, for them to move their troops from Krim to Ukraine, but they seem to like advance very quickly in the first days. So I don't know, being from that region, do you have any thoughts as to why they were able to do that? Was it because people expected something different, or they had collaborators, or Ukraine wasn't prepared or didn't take it seriously? Like, I don't know. Do you have any?
I would say that it is a combination of the factors. Definitely, we now have the investigation about that case, and I hope that one day we would have their full version, maybe during the tribunal in the future, but not during the war. The issue is that I remember 1 month before the war, and we've been discussing with the people like General Ben Hodges what is the most potential scenario. And I remember that when Ben Hodges talked about Crimea, most of the Ukrainians who know the region, who is very serious expert, they were saying, "Oh, he's exaggerating." And I said, I know Ben. He's not the person for the panic. He is the real general, not from the office. He sees what is happening, how it is possible to do. And then we sat and I said, for my opinion, there are 3 directions where Russians can do it. The question is how far they go. And exactly, I said that it would be north, and something connected with Belarus that would be east because they are there, they need, and that would be south because there are several things what they need on the south. That is strategic logic behind this. And then what we saw that most of the experts concentrated on the east, and that's where the preparation been happening. So first factor is undermining of the threat in general. You remember these feelings, Russians would not attack. Maximum, it would be provocation. Yeah. So a political underestimation of the threat. The second, underestimation of the directions from where Russia can come and with which forces they can go. Because would they like just to occupy Kakhovka hydroelectric station, as many people were thinking, or they would like really to occupy the whole Ukraine? That's the different forces that you need to concentrate and where to concentrate. The third is definitely that at that time, military was not ready for this. Our military maximum was concentrated on the anti-terroristic operation. So even those things that happened around Kiev for the protection, that was more because of the individual generals at that time who realized what are the threats, how to behave. It was not the strategic plan of acting at the whole territory. South became without this person at the very first day. Yep. So unfortunately, we didn't have anybody who could. It took just a few days before, for example, to Mykolaiv, one of the generals arrived who really could understand the picture. Betrayers, yes, we already have these proofs. There are people arrested. We know what they did. So there are a lot of, but that's also this underestimation happened because these betrayers were reporting the certain information to Kiev. To make a proper estimation, you need to have a proper information and the facts. So betrayal, yes. And then terrain. Let's be honest, terrain also worked. At the north, you had forests, you had mud, you had winter on the north of Ukraine. That is quite difficult for the bad prepared armed forces. And Russian forces were bad prepared at the first week. On the south, you have what we call steppe, the open field. There is no natural, except of Dnieper River, there is no natural barricades, or how to say it, the break points. You have something that would barriers. Yes, it's just flat. So you can go quicker, easier, and you have several roads because of the terrain. So that's why it was important to stop them simultaneously at several directions. And probably yet one that people thought that Okay, for Kherson, maybe like to occupy Kherson, you need to cross the river. Yeah. So they thought that they more or less can be protected over there, but for this you need to have a proper forces in Kherson, and you didn't have any proper forces in Kherson. It is a small town, and it was not seen as the town at the administrative border with occupied territories. And Odessa was thinking more about the landing operation from the sea. So our defense and protection plans also were more about the ships coming, and that's happened here, or attack from Transnistria. So a lot of forces at the first days were also concentrated at the Transnistria border because we were afraid of the Russian armed forces coming from occupied Transnistria. You see, I named you just several big facts. There were more of the smaller facts at that time that allowed them this happening. But yeah, history doesn't like the conditional sentences. It's happened, and could it be done something better? Yes. But as always, before you first feel the real war, you never believe that war can come to you.
Yeah, and then after the war came, I mean, Ukraine was very successful in employing new technologies to sort of get rid of the Russian Navy that was in the Black Sea. I mean, that's a pretty incredible story. Um, can you maybe talk about like why was that successful? I mean, Ukraine doesn't have a navy, yet they forced the Russian Navy to basically leave that port, correct? Like there's really no ships left in Sevastopol or anywhere near the Black Sea. Is that right?
Yeah, Ukraine managed to, I would say, liberate their western north of the Black Sea from the Russian ships. They are now predominantly stationing in Novorossiysk, what is the Russian port, not even occupied Ukrainian, or around the Azov Sea. So they are concentrated more from that side. The reasons for the technological advance, I believe there are two main reasons. Reason number one is strategic. When we realize that our resources are definitely several times smaller than Russian. And our partners were not in a hurry to support us with that amount of ammunition, and technology that we need. So we couldn't bring the parity, and definitely we would never be able to bring a parity to the personnel. So for the East, we need to act asymmetrical. That's more about this necessity when you started to think how you can use your resources more effective, both in terms of the operational, strategic thinking, planning, resources used, but also what else you can use. Yeah, what can be your weapon in these cases? So that was just a decision, not to, if they have 300 ammunition, to have the same 300 ammunition, but how to destroy that stockpile, if to say easily. Yeah. The second is Ukraine was always very good with the electronics and different types of IT and all these new technologies. Many of the Ukrainian originated companies are unicorns in Silicon Valley. The issue is that we never included this in the military or defense sphere. So it was predominantly business before 2022. And all these innovations were concentrated not for the business purposes. Yeah, they were developed for the business. The second is that it was not supported by the government. Even when we had a fantastic developments, R&D within the state enterprise, they lacked financing. But the engineers were working, the ideas were there, the School of Engineering was there, the School of IT was there. As soon as the war started, we had a combination of the government understanding that we needed, so they simplified some of the procedures. They found money for the drones, for example, or something like this. The second combination is the social responsibility of the business who came and said, like, guys, we have it. Let's do something together. And suddenly the private company started to develop the military or dual use things. So when you've developed a commercial drone for agriculture, what Ukraine been doing, yeah, why not to think how to transform it? You're not starting from the scratch. So when you had the governmental military support and the desire of business to be involved, plus a lot of the IT guys who joined the armed forces because they said, we know how to do it. Let us help as the volunteers originally. That brought this necessary mass of efforts. And then you need, in innovations, you just need to make a proper trigger, a push. And then it is like a snowball that is coming and coming. And additional important things what government did, originally it was not even official, but they allowed it, real-time testing. None of the technologies can work if you cannot test them in the real-time conditions, in the real work conditions. We know cases when the US government in 2022 were delivering to Ukraine a super sophisticated drones, very expensive, highly advertised. We were expecting them. They tested them only at the polygons. They were fresh new. They came to Ukraine. In 1 month, we said, thank you, please don't deliver them anymore. They were absolutely incapable to fly in the real world conditions because at the polygon, you cannot even think about all the disruptive conditions that can be there. Plus Russian electronic warfare that Americans were not checking. They were thinking when they were developing them more about Iraqi, ISIS, Taliban or something like this, not the country with also sophisticated military industry. So because it was this very agile circle of the R&D, you're developing, you're sending for testing to some unit is returning back to you saying, this works, this doesn't work. The engineers immediately adjusted it and sent it back. You had a perfect, quick circle of the development that brought us to the situation that for at least 1 year, Ukraine was much more advanced from Russia. Unfortunately, now Russia is taking the pace. So in some of the technologies, they are better than us, in some worse, but we cannot say that now they are just very much behind us. It's already a daily competition in this sphere.
Yeah, so you said something like our partners, didn't give us the parity of weapons. And I remember during the anti-terrorist operation or the war that Russia was fomenting in the East, but they were hiding about it. And there was always like this feeling, I feel like by Ukrainians that like, oh, if we can only show that Russia's involved, the West will step up and do something and become more involved, right? And I was always like, that's a bit of a naive thing. The West knows Russia's involved, but they don't want to get involved. They're sort of turning a blind eye. It's not our problem. And then the full invasion happened and they were forced to respond. And they responded pretty slowly. I mean, an argument could be made that if they had, given everything that Ukraine needed, that stretched out over many months, and that Ukraine, things could have played differently. Being, this is your expertise. Like, is this the response that you expected from NATO or and the West, or was it? Did they do more? Did they do less? I mean, there's this like you're looking at it and it's like, well, is it the Europeans' problem? Is it the Americans' problem? Why should they get involved? Ukrainians had this expectation. I feel like the West would come on the side of justice and like protect the skies and all this in the beginning. There was it's shocking to sort of like stand by and watch all this terror going on and knowing that the technology is there to stop it, but it's not quite happening. So I don't know, what were your expectations? And like, what is your perception of how things played out?
We did several projects within the Ukrainian Prism when we tried to find out, especially in connection with the NATO topic. And in addition to the myths that and narratives that Russia really was successful abroad about this NATO enlargement, the second successful narrative was these myths about escalation. And you are coming to the French MOD, US State Department, you are coming to Italy, you are coming to Germany. I mean, it was all around the NATO member state. And everybody is saying like, yeah, you can't do it because it will be escalation. Yeah. And we one day became just pissed off asking like, okay, what does it mean escalation? You already had Mariupol. What can be worse than Mariupol for you to intervene? Like, what it is, what does it mean escalation? And the fact escalation means the fear that Russia will use nuclear weapon. So because of this ambiguity that Russia pushed and each time said that is the red line, that would be the escalation. Ukraine's been proving there is no red lines for Russians. All their red lines are very rosy because like, oh, if you attack Russian Navy in Crimea, that is the red line. Ukraine destroyed with the British missile the Russian Navy headquarters in Sevastopol. Nothing happened. No escalation, no even the serious response to this. We destroyed Moscow ship, nothing happened. We destroyed that, nothing. We even entered Kursk, the Russian territory. Have you seen any escalation after this? No, they were not even able to protect their own territory. So that was more psychological of this fear of escalation. I would say that it was self-imposed even to the self-imposed to our Western partners. And because of this, each time we had us, no, 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 you can, and the also it was the, fear that Ukrainians are aggressive, nationalistic, that we would like to have a revanche. I still can't understand from where um, these came, because Ukraine never attacked anybody before. We never had wars before. Like our history never proved about this. There were no statements from us. But if we give you HIMARS, will you attack Russians? If we give you ATACMS, will you attack Russians? Yes, we will attack Russia because they are attacking us. So why we need to intercept each of these missiles when we can attack their airplanes standing at the airfield, for example? That's just military logic behind this. But each time we needed to prove. 3 years we are proving that we are not attacking civilian residential areas in Russia. But there is still questions, should we be given any type of the missile that is longer than 300 kilometers? Because who knows if you attack Moscow. If Russia is attacking Kiev, why we cannot attack any object, military object inside of Moscow capital? So I still don't know what arguments to find, because for me, it looked like it's logical. Everything is visible. You have 3 years of experience. Each time we pass the same way. Like, no, you can't get this. No, you can't have this. No, you can't get this. In 3-6 months as we are receiving it, we demonstrate that it has influence at the battlefield. And we could have it 1 year ago, for example. We demonstrate how responsible we are with these weapons. We even attack like the spiderweb operation. We attack their strategic venues without any Western weapons. And you see that there is no reaction or revenge from the Russian side. But no, at the next meeting with the foreign politicians, we received this question, but that can be escalation. Okay, if you believe like this, so next time escalation can be that it would be your territory.
Well, now we have, the Trump administration, and we're recording this one day before Trump's deadline to Putin to come up with some sort of ceasefire plan. And I mean, I have my personal views on this, but I'm curious what your before I say that, like what's your take on the way Trump has handled the war and dealing with Zelensky and dealing with Russia? Like I don't know. Does he have? I see a lot of theater, but not a lot of action. And now they're talking about this potential meeting between Trump and Zelensky based on Russia's terms for a ceasefire, which is basically like a surrender for Ukraine. I don't, what are your thoughts about what's been happening the last weeks with this deadline and these changing deadlines and these constant 2 weeks and the new administration in general? Like how does it look from your point of view, like being in this sort of world and analyzing this kind of behavior?
Originally in January, I remember that when journalists been asking, like, what are your expectations? How do you think will it be good or bad for Ukraine to have Trump as the president? My response was that our biggest problem is his unpredictability. That can be good and bad. You just don't know. You cannot prepare and make your plans appropriately. And the second problem that we may have is that he believes that he has a good contact, personal contact with Putin, and that would be enough. It's not, I disagree when some people are saying that Trump is pro-Russia or something like this. Absolutely not. He's pro-American. That's enough, and that's okay for the US president. Yeah, like he's not Ukrainian president to be pro-Ukrainian or pro-somebody else. The issue is that he consider the other side thinking the same way as him, as businessman. What is beneficial, what is not? How important are money? How important are deals? And he believes the deal can be reached on anything. What is theoretically true when you speak with the UK or Brussels or Paris, yeah, when you speak with the democratic nations that understand the value of life, the value of partnership, that calculate the taxes and the money that they need to spend for something. Yeah, tariffs is important for that. But all of these doesn't work with Russia. For Russia, this war is not pragmatic. This war for them is emotional, first of all. This war about the secure of regime and about Ukraine as the existential threat for them because Ukraine is democratic, doing something different and getting out of Russia. So Russia would not be able to be an empire. And Putin believes that he is the emperor. He is just growing on all these ideas, and he would like to return back the Soviet Union at least. And we are just everything against what he believes in or what he wants from life. And because of these tremendous difference in the views, you cannot just get a deal. It's not a subject of what you can negotiate because you are right. All demands that Russia is putting for all these 3 years, they're not about their security. They are about dismantling of the Ukrainian nationhood and statehood. And in these conditions, it took us quite a long time. We took probably originally the wrong tactic of speaking with Washington because we thought that it is understandable there that we needed to persuade that Russia is not a reliable partner for negotiations. That Russia is coming to and responding to calls from Washington, not to cease-fire, but to prevent Washington of introduction the new sanctions. Because they caught the logic. They demonstrate a little bit to Trump that, oh, we are ready for the negotiations. Why should you impose the sanctions? And then we postpone it, and then we delayed it, and then we are waiting when the next is coming. They really hope that Trump would lose interest in this because it is crisis in the Middle East, because it is crisis in other regions. So they played with his ego. Then they played with this idea that they have good relations and that he's the deal man. Unfortunately, till now, they were quite successful with this. Till I would say the last month. Now we are in this difficult process when we hear from President Trump that he finally understood that Putin is not that nice guy, that each time he is promising, but just intensifying attacks against Ukraine. And I understand that now it is difficult for him to change his mind immediately. He still believes in peace and he really would like to have this peace. But he is already in this cognitive change of perception of Russia. So for us, it is very important now to continue this track, to demonstrate that Ukraine is ready for negotiation, that we never were against negotiations. It is just the question about what we are talking and how to demonstrate that Russia is not a reliable partner.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot of time wasted and lives and property destroyed for Trump to learn what has been so obvious, since the beginning, or to most people. But given that it is what it is, um, there's this potential like, okay, Rubio saying we have some sort of like Russian terms for a ceasefire. And everything we've heard from them is like give up territory, give up territory that Russia doesn't even have access to right now. And so, this meeting between Zelensky and Trump, I mean, what do you think that this can yield anything? Is this a positive step? Is there, because the mentality for Ukrainians is Putin could, like a bully, like you can only stop him until he's physically stopped. And that's the only way to stop the war. It is to like destroy Russia, like physically prevent them from doing it and advancing. So Trump doesn't seem to realize that. They still seem to think that there's some sort of negotiation to be made, and there's nothing to guarantee Ukraine's continued that doesn't happen again in the future, right? Like, I mean, that's the problem from Ukrainians' point of view. Yeah, I'm rambling on a little bit, but I think you get like the point I'm trying to ask is like, is there a deal to be made with Russia? Is this meeting productive? Do you think this will be like the way Trump goes, or will there be a shift towards, militarily giving Ukraine what it needs, and that's what, we all believe will be a long-term end to the war?
I always said that without proper significant changes inside of Russia, this war would never end. And these can be a change of the president, first of all, even that it is not a Putin war, and we should be very clear about this. That became a Russian war. Too many Russians really support this war. And the politicians, and not only the inner circle, but the state machine is really supporting this war. Business supports this war because the billionaires, despite the sanctions, just gained money and became richer because of the military contracts. Different regions, because of the military spending, just developed, and before they were very depressed. So it is a Russian war, but there are options of either coup, when the new people are coming, who can be not democratic, but they're just understanding that it's more beneficial for them to finish this war. Or it is the real change, a tremendous change, a revolution in Russia. In the second one, unfortunately, I don't believe, because of the society moods, but and I don't see a real opposition, neither inside nor in exile. But without this, without real change in Russia, I don't believe in the long-term solutions. Saying this, I support the negotiations when they can get us at least something. So was it good or bad to meet in Istanbul? One would say that, oh, there are no results. It was just a waste of time. Others would say Ukraine returned back 1,000 prisoners of war. Was it worse to sit this 1 hour with the long, stupid lectures of Medinsky about fake history? If we return back 1,000 of the Ukrainian soldiers that were tortured in the Russian prisons, yes, it worth it. And all members of that negotiation team would say, yes, it would worth it. Plus, being at these negotiations clearly demonstrate to the world what Russia means from these negotiations. Yeah. It's not us who are saying that Russians are reliable or not. It is now the US saying that why they send, like Ukraine is ready to speak at the level of Zelensky, we are sending the Minister of Defense, and they are sending some assistance to the president with the bad reputation. Yeah, all these signals are very demonstrative. They also build the puzzle of the picture of how other nations are responding or how they behave with the Russians. Then, so would it be 35 type of these negotiations? If we can return civilians, if we can return military, that's already good. Let's have that. If the negotiations of 3 presidents will lead to the certain ceasefire, maybe. Here, why I say maybe compared to like prisoners of war, that it is important, because we understand the logic. Usually Russia proposed in the public, if you analyze the 3 years, Russia has been proposing ceasefire each time when they had difficulties at the battlefield, when they needed a pause for production of the biggest amount of ammunition. And we know that Ukraine is targeting their airplanes, strategic airplanes, and they're in the very bad condition, so they need to find time for their repairmen to be able to attack with missiles. We attacking some of the productions of the drones, even that they are producing enormous amount of the drones, using, by the way, a lot of the African free labor. You have those girls that they took to Alabuga just for the studying, but de facto they are working at the production. So all of this is they need time. They also need time to take money because the budget is not that nice as for now. With the secondary sections, they will have even less money. So we need to understand as well that ceasefire doesn't mean stop for Ukrainian support. So de facto for Ukraine, it would mean negotiations at the 2 fronts, negotiations with Russia and negotiations with our partners, explaining that ceasefire doesn't mean that you need to stop military support of Ukraine, because any moment Russia can accumulate efforts and capabilities and just attack us, and we need to be prepared for defense.
Do you think Europe can sort of step in and fill the gap that America? Maybe Trump is is Europe going to be able to step up? There's a lot of talk, but I don't see as much that they're going to. But I don't see as much happening. Is stuff happening behind the scenes? Will it be happening in the near future if things continue this way?
There are a lot of things happening, but we need to understand several not political but very practical things. The military industry of the United States is nothing to compare with Europeans. Europeans can be very good in some technologies, but in terms of the scope of the production, it's absolutely different. So the European enterprises are just not able to start producing 10 times more of the certain type of the munition or ammunition. Yep. The US has much more of these production facilities. So that's question number one. And that is not the thing that you can change in 1 month, even that if you bring $1 billion for this. It's just a process of constructing this production. The second issue is that the US has a lot of the already produced, and that is important. You don't need to wait for the production. You just need to deliver. And when we spend that amount daily, we need it quickly. So if you already have it, if you would not deliver it in Ukraine, you would have the problem, as US already had several times, when you're just spending more time on the demolishing of the certain type of the munition, what could be cheaper to deliver to Ukraine and use them for the purpose. Not speaking about all those munitions that the US forces had around the Middle East, for example, or in Afghanistan, they were just left there that could be used in Ukraine. And the question number three is that US has certain type of the ammunition that unfortunately none of the other countries in the world has. Patriot missiles is that type of there. Unfortunately, none of the European states has it. And again, the certain type of the ballistic missiles, especially when we speak supersonic missiles like Oreshnik that Russians just tested, it is only Patriots that can intercept them. So in this way, it doesn't matter how much Europeans are producing of the other types, they just don't have these technologies. And that's why without the US, you can supplement certain types. Yeah, Ukrainians are better in drones, we just need money. Europeans have very good armor vehicles, for example, yeah, that they just need money, or the howitzers. The Caesar French howitzer is extremely good. So you just need money and efforts to produce them. Or the regular 155 ammunition, theoretically, you have even Brazil producing this. It's just that Brazil doesn't want to sell it to Ukraine. But you can have other countries doing it. But when you go to the certain types like Patriots, unfortunately, it's only the US.
Well, it seems like the US will supply some Patriots, and maybe this deal where Europe's going to buy then American stuff and donate it to Ukraine is really, not the worst solution. Well, I know you have to go. You're planning a trip. Maybe we'll end on like what's next for you. What's this trip about? What are you doing in your professional life these days?
Yeah, in addition to the security issues, we in the Ukrainian Prism 3 years ago realized that Ukraine really needs to go beyond Europe and the US. And we need to build a global partnership, not the advocacy trips going and pledging them for something, but to speak, to understand the so-called global South, or not so global South like Japan or Australia, but those countries beyond, to understand how they can support Ukraine, what can be the joint interest, what are their interests where Ukraine can help, yeah. And we are doing it through the expert diplomacy. So we initiated the project on the global partnership where we engaging the think tanks and universities around the globe. We are prioritized a certain number of countries. We already spent quite a time in Japan, Korea, Australia, India, Qatar, and now we are developing the Latin American track as well. So this week, my team together with me is traveling to Chile. The regional leaders, one of the countries that supports Ukraine, that is with the quite a democratic governance and with the potential and interest in Ukraine. So let's see how it will be there, because we think that there are issues we can talk about, from maritime security to the middle-sized countries in the United Nations and the rule of law, because let's be honest, how Ukraine can speak, not only our experience, but also emphasizing the issue that the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, the countries that owns the nuclear weapons, violated the international order and law. And what does it mean for all others? What can we do? How we can secure that order that protected us for 80 years? And that's the issues that we are discussing with them, sharing our experience that we also were not expecting that somebody attacked us, what you need to learn from us, what we need to learn from you, so you would support us, at least within the United Nations, if not other international organizations. And I hope that for me, it would be the first time in that country. We already see a high interest from the military academies, from the political scientists to speak with us. And I hope that it will bring together with us back to Ukraine new ideas about how Ukraine can be useful and interesting to the world.
No, that sounds very ambitious and interesting and needed for Ukraine and to have these alliances and partners. And so I wish you the best with that and hopefully success and in everything you do. And thank you for making time for me today. I know you have always a lot going on, so I appreciate it. And yeah, дякую.
Дякую.
Доки всі сплять, доки сонце іще не зійшло, гине вогонь, догоряє остання лампада, де той літак, що світанком візьме на крило і понесе, там де небо, тепло і зорепад, доки всі сплять, доки тиша скрипить за вікном, холод весни заповзає в кімнату над раннім, де той вокзал, що покличе сигнальним гудком і проведе між одвічними вперше й востаннє, доки всі сплять, доки сон обіймає рідню в світлі вогню, ти ледь чутно виходиш з кімнати, сонце встає, йде назустріч наступному.